Okay, so while this sets up, we will resume our discussion on the Nectar of Devotion from chapter 3, and which is the eligibility for performing devotional service. So I'll speak for a little while, and then we can have any discussions on that chapter or any previous chapters. So let me go ahead and share. Okay, chapter 3, eligibility of the candidate for accepting devotional service. So this is where we are in the second way, which is the sadhana bhakti. And this is building on the definition of bhakti and the symptoms of bhakti. So in the introduction, Rupa Goswami, he established the basis of basically everything that is going to be coming up, which is by defining pure devotional service by the wonderful verse Anabhilashita Shunyam, analyzing it. So he described what the bhakti is. Then moving on from theory to practice. So there is a theoretical definition and there is a manifestation of bhakti. So how do we know the bhakti that has been described in the introduction is appearing? So the 6 symptoms of bhakti, kleshangni, subhuda, moksha lagudakrit. So those 6 symptoms that appear at various stages of maturity of the bhakti, by which we know that bhakti has appeared and bhakti is growing. Then in the second chapter, the sadhana vaidhi bhakti was described. And the beginning stages of bhakti, when one performs devotion by the senses, one does not necessarily have a spontaneous attraction to bhakti, but one is convinced about the need to practice bhakti. So bhakti at this stage is described more based on the injunctions and the prohibitions that come from the scriptures. And now this chapter will describe the basic qualifications for practicing devotional service. Different ways this is phrased. Also eligibility for practicing devotional service. Also advancement of the practicing devotee. They more or less kind of mean the same thing. They translate to the Sanskrit word adhikar, that the right to perform devotional service. So we'll talk about the 3 levels of devotees, right, the 3 grades of eligibility, and we will also talk about the mood of the devotees with respect to the non-devotional activities of bhakti, which is material enjoyment, and mukti, which is liberation. So first, let us look at the eligibility for executing bhakti. So in the previous discussion, we had talked about how sadhana vedhi bhakti, it emanates from one's attraction or taste for things that are related to Krishna. Right? That essentially is faith. Right? And we had done a little bit of the prerequisites for that also, that one gets the causeless mercy of a devotee at some point of time. That may result directly in one taking to bhakti, or it may result in ahituki, in gyat sukriti, or it may result in purvaras. So ultimately, because of one reason or other that is coming from the mercy of a devotee, one develops some faith. Now, again, we did this in the previous chapter, that when bhakti is performed by the body, mind, and words, by the senses, it is sadhana bhakti. Sadhana bhakti is Vaidhi and Raghunatha. The difference between the two is the impetus for bhakti. Vaidhi bhakti, the impetus is external. It is instructions of the guru, faith in the sadhu, faith in the scripture. So it's external. Raghunatha is more spontaneous. It is still sadhana, still performed with the senses, but one has actually begun to develop a taste for devotional service. Now, at the basis of Vaidhi Bhakti is these two injunctions. Always remember Krishna and never forget Krishna. Right? So that famous verse, Smartavyor, that one will always remember Krishna. And the companion injunction is, or the prohibition is, never forget Krishna. And so first part of it is the order, do this, which is pravriti. And the second part of it is don't do this, which is nivriti. So by following pravriti, by following the rules of the orders, one remembers Krishna. And by avoiding the prohibitions, one will never forget Krishna. Like if one chants 16 rounds, one will remember Krishna. If one avoids the breaking of the four regulative principles, one will not forget Krishna. And now, this do's and the don'ts are based on scriptures. And so herein comes the knowledge element. So how do you know what are the do's and what are the don'ts? It is the knowledge as per the scriptures. This knowledge may be presented to us by Guru and Sadhu. So whatever the Guru speaks is as per the scriptures. Whatever the Sadhu speaks is as per the scriptures. But essentially what they are giving us is the knowledge of the scriptures. So these two components determine the eligibility of a devotee to perform devotional service. Because we see that these are the two axes for sadhana vedhi bhakti: faith and knowledge. Right? So, explaining it again a little bit more, same thing being explained because it's an important concept, that for whatever reason, a jiva gets the mercy of a devotee. Because of that mercy, one develops faith, Shraddha. Right? So this is called soft faith, but one develops faith. So faith comes from one who already has faith. Right? So this mercy essentially is transferring faith. So because of the mercy of a devotee, one develops faith in Bhakti and Krishna. One then begins to execute the preliminary stages of Bhakti, the sadhana, Vaidhi Bhakti. Now, when one is executing these stages or is inclined to execute it, then the natural question comes how to execute it. And this is the big difference between the execution of bhakti according to the scriptures as opposed to executing it whimsically. And so the adherence to the scriptures is what makes the execution of bhakti bona fide. So these are the two the two feeding tubes, so to speak, right? Through sadhana, Vaidhi, bhakti, faith and knowledge, which are determining the adhikar of the devotee. So once you have this concept, then you can understand the eligibility of a practicing devotee. Because everything that they are doing is being sustained by these two things, by their faith and by the knowledge of the scriptures. So the faith at this point is, to begin with, it's faith in the scriptures and the conclusions. Right? So one does not have that much of a relationship with Krishna or even awareness of it. But at least there is faith in the scriptures. That if it is said in the scriptures, it is bona fide. If it is not said in the scriptures, then it is not. Now, it does not mean that the person is completely able to follow everything in the scriptures and reject everything that is not, but at least that faith is there. If that faith is not even there, when one person says, my neighbor has told me this, and my uncle has told me this, and my grandmother has told me this, then essentially the person does not even have faith in the scriptures. Right? So the very basis is weakened. Then faith in the Purushartha, at least the faith that the goal of life is to please Krishna. Intellectual. This is mostly intellectual. And then faith in sadhana, very important. That one must have faith in the process and the goal. So the goal is to please Krishna and the process is sadhana. Again, we have all seen examples of people who may have faith that I have to please Krishna, but they do not have faith in the process. They try to jump over everybody's head and say that I am now an intimate associate of Krishna. I don't have to follow the rules and regulations because I am already experiencing ecstatic symptoms of association of Krishna. So they're rejecting the process. They may have faith in the goal, but they're rejecting the process and they're rejecting the scriptures. And so these faith in these three things are important. Then knowledge of the scriptures. Right? So one has faith in the scriptures. What will one do based on that faith is read the scriptures. Right? So knowledge of the bona fide scriptures or on the commentaries on the scriptures written by the acharyas. and then logic of following the statements of the scriptures. Right? So this is important, that even though bhakti at this stage requires a fair amount of surrender, but it is not blind surrender. Like Prabhupada would say, that we don't surrender our intelligence, we surrender with our intelligence. And so, if the scripture is asking us to do something, we should also have an understanding of why is it that the scripture is asking us to do that. Right? If we are asked to get up in the morning and chant, then we should also have this understanding why that injunction is given. So that part is also important. Then defending the philosophy. So it's not necessary that everybody has to debate their beliefs with others, but defending the philosophy is also defending the philosophy to one's own self. Because many times devotees, they may practice while harboring doubts. And eventually the doubts will overcome that. Right? In the fourth chapter, Krishna, he compares, he talks about those who have uh, uh, no faith, and and those who have uh, uncertain faith. And then he says, of the two, the one who has uncertain faith is actually more unfortunate, because they have the ability to reach the highest goal. But because they do not take the extra step of resolving their doubts, then they're actually doomed for failure. Krishna says life after life after life, right? He makes a heavy statement over there. So the knowledge is also to defend the philosophy to one's own self. That I have this doubt, how do I resolve it? And then finally, knowledge of the do's and the don'ts. And this is probably the simplest part. That if I'm going to practice bhakti, then I have faith in sadhana, and also I have knowledge about what does sadhana entail. So faith inspires to act, and knowledge dictates how to act. They both have to go together. Right? Because if one does not have faith, the inspiration to act will not be there. So that faith will give us that inspiration that we have to do something. Our purusharth is to please Krishna. I need to do it, right? I need to follow the practice of bhakti. And knowledge will tell you how to do it. That now that you have this conviction, even though it may be soft, this is how you will do it. And Prabhupada makes this statement in the Bhagavad Gita, and many other times Prabhupada makes the statement that religion without philosophy is sentiment, and philosophy without religion is mental speculation. So you can use religion as a stand-in for faith. That if somebody is just doing something without understanding why, then it is sentiment or superstition. That somebody is simply doing something because it's being done in the generations before, or because culturally it is there, the society is doing it. It's just sentiment. It's not going to take any roots. And the flip side is that philosophy, which means one has the knowledge. One knows what to do, but does not do it. Right? Then it is just mental speculation. And sometimes when you will meet with people who are academicians, right? I used to attend interfaith so this was the Vaishnav Christian dialogue, Vaishnav Muslim dialogues. And it was interesting that many of these people who came to these dialogues, they were like professors in religion, in Hindu study from Harvard and different universities. They knew the Bhagavad Gita inside out. They could quote from different verses, they could quote from several commentaries, but they were not practicing. They just knew it. So Prabhupada sometimes called them armchair philosophers. So it's just mental speculation. And they'll say, well, this verse, Prabhupada said this, but Madhavacharya said this, Ramacharya said this. So it's just mental gymnastics for them. Both need to go hand in hand, faith and knowledge. So now we come to the crux of the chapter. What are the grades of eligibility based on faith and knowledge? So we'll start from the bottom. So Kanishta Adhikari is the neophyte devotee. And for such a person, both faith and knowledge is weak. So faith meaning weak is that they're easily swayed. Somebody tells them that worship Krishna, but along with that, also worship Kali, also worship Ganesh. Say okay, right? Or somebody will tell them that yes, you can do bhakti, but this is the age of Kali. Okay to eat meat because something because of the special dispensations for the age of Kali. They'll say okay. So easily swayed, right? Because of both internal and external pressures. Weak knowledge means that when they are in this position, when somebody is offering them alternatives, they don't know enough to say yes or no. So if it is somebody that is opposing them, they may not know, or they may not be able to defend. Right? Or this may be a person from a different religion, or from a different sampradaya, or just a different conception. Right? So weak knowledge and weak faith. That is Kanishtadhikari. Madhyavadhikari is one who has strong faith. So they're convinced about the need to develop love for Krishna. They're convinced that the goal of the life is to serve Krishna and the devotees. But the knowledge is weak. So the knowledge is good, better than the Kanishta, but it is not strong enough to defend it against opposing opinions. And the reason that it's not strong enough is not just because they haven't read the scriptures in depth, it's also because they have not realized the knowledge, because they haven't been practicing sufficiently. We'll see a little bit more, but knowledge here is not Gyan, it is Vigyan. Gyan is just understanding, knowing the shlokas. Vigyan is understanding the shlokas. That's the difference between the two. So the knowledge here, because the person hasn't practiced long enough, the knowledge is not that strong that they can defeat opposing opinion, even within themselves. They may have opinions that they themselves are not fully convinced about. Uttamadhikari has strong faith and strong knowledge. So they're convinced and can convince others, and they can defeat opposing opinions, right? So their conviction of the goal is strong. Krishna is my aim. Their knowledge of the process is strong. They have been practicing it for a while. They have very strong realizations. They can speak from practical realizations. And sometimes when you're sitting in classes, you can see the difference. especially when you're attending classes of senior devotees, they may be giving very simple answers to the questions, but they're giving it based on very deep personal realizations. And it makes so much of an impact. Another person may be quoting a lot of verses or maybe giving a shastrically elaborate answer, but you can see the difference between that. Uh, when Srila Prabhupada was preaching, interestingly, the earlier disciples, even the later disciples who approached Prabhupada, um, they were mostly impressed by his own conviction. They could not understand Prabhupada had an accent. They could not understand completely what Prabhupada was saying. And Prabhupada would speak, he would intersperse Sanskrit. He was speaking about a subject that also they did not understand. But if you look at the videos of the memories of the disciples, one thing that is common is that when they were in the presence of Prabhupada, they felt that whatever he was saying, he was experiencing, and that impacted them a lot. Right? So this is the power of realization, that even without saying anything, like strong knowledge doesn't mean that you can give 24 verses to support one. That may be a part of it. But strong knowledge means that you can speak from a platform of deep realizations. So a little bit more about each of these three stages. Kanishtadhikari is weak faith and weak knowledge. So the person's conviction is in the meaning of the scripture, right? So they may not know much in terms of knowledge, but they kind of understand what the scriptures mean. So most of us are in the stage of Kanishtadhikari, right? So we think that Kanishtadhikari is like a neophyte, but actually, and these in other books, the Kanishtadhikari is also divided into three stages. But actually, the Kanishtadhikari, by the time you reach to the maturity of Kanishtadhikari, it is a very, very mature stage there, right? So it's not that only the person in the first 6 months is a Kanishta and later on becomes a Madhyam. Most of us are actually in this stage. Our conviction is mostly in the meaning of the scriptures, that yes, we have to chant, right? Now give me 5 references of why we have to chant. Most of us will not be able to come up with it, right? Do you have any personalizations about the need to chant? Most of us will not have that. So these are the quotes from Prabhupada in the book. So Kanishtadhikari has no firm faith in the objective, which indicates that he does have some faith, but it is weak. Since he does have some faith that he should please Krishna and abandon other desires, he will become eligible to practice Uttam Bhakti. And so essentially Prabhupada is saying that to become an Uttam Bhakti, you have to practice Kanishta Bhakti. And Kanishta Bhakti gives you this leverage. You may have, it may be weak, but that faith is there. And that faith then grows. Madhyavadikari, strong faith and good knowledge. So medium qualification has strong faith but is somewhat lacking in spiritual knowledge. He is not an expert in arguing on the strength of revealed scriptures, but he has firm faith in the objective. And Uttamadhikari has strong faith and strong knowledge. A person who is skillful in scripture and logic, completely firm in his belief. Right? So how does this firmness in belief come? It comes from the realizations that come with practice. That when we chant and we experience the pleasures of chanting, the safety of chanting, right? Then that faith becomes firm. Strong knowledge, Prabhupada says, is very expert in the study of relevant scriptures and also expert in putting forward arguments in terms of those scriptures, right? So there is definitely a academic component of the Gyan, right? So there is that Vigyan, which is the realization that comes from practice. And then there is the academic component of Gyan, which is understanding the scriptures in a way that one is able to defend one's position. If somebody is arguing, I remember once I went to a temple in somewhere in Pittsburgh, I believe, in Philadelphia. This was a temple of, I think it was called a Ranganath temple, and the person who was kind of like, I guess he was the owner of the temple. He could see that we were just by Kantimala. So I'd gone with some other devotees. He could see we were from ISKCON. And, the first thing he said was that Krishna is an expansion of Vishnu. Right? I remember he was standing on the altar. He saw us. He turned to us, and he was cordial, welcome, etc. And he said, "You should know that Krishna is an expansion of Krishna." And I said, but in the Bhagavatam, and then he knew exactly, the verse that I was going to quote. He already quoted that verse, and he said that's just one verse, and he quoted 10 other verses which talked about the supremacy of Vishnu. I mean, he obviously had a lot more knowledge than I had, and I did not debate with him. Later on, I wrote to Maharaj, and Maharaj said, "You do some research." So then I basically kind of wrote a small paper, and I said, I mean, overall, he was very cordial. He was very grateful for devotees to mention it. We were there for 2 days, and he went out of his way to honor us as Vaishnavas, etc. There. Other than the fact that he kept making this point about the position of Vishnu with respect to Krishna. So then later on, under Maharaj's guidance, I wrote just like a small paper and sent it to him. He didn't respond to it. But just an example of how somebody with strong knowledge, like Guru Maharaj, he was able to address this. And somebody who did not have, like me, was not able to address it. So there is definitely a component of the academic knowledge, the knowing, and there is a component of the realized knowledge. What is strong faith? Understanding perfectly that the ultimate goal is to attain Krishna, right? So this is simply levels of maturity of the same thing. The Kanishta Adhikari understands that the goal of the life is service to Krishna. The Madhyama Adhikari understands more so, and the Uttama Adhikari understands it even more so. So Prabhupada says in page 29 that he attains firm faith in the scriptures by understanding with all reasons and arguments, right? So here, Prabhupada is marrying the two things, the faith and knowledge. So we'll use this famous verse, Chaturveda bhajante mam, Jana Sukritan Arjuna, Arthojikya Surarthati Gyani Shabha. It comes in the 7th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. So Krishna talks about 4 kinds of people who approach him. So there is Artho, which is distressed. Example is Gajendra. He had a crocodile trying to kill him, and then he starts praying to Lord Vishnu. Then we have Artharthi, the one who is desiring wealth. And we have the example of Dhruv Maharaj, that he wanted a kingdom bigger than his father and grandfather. So he was praying to Lord Vishnu. Jityasur. So these are the sages in Naimisharanya. Right? They were very curious. They wanted to know more. What did Sukadeva Goswami say? Right? So they were asking Sutta Goswami all these questions. And Jnani. And these are the 4 Kumars who were were well versed in the scriptures. So these are the four kinds of people who are pious but without faith. Now, important to understand that it's not that the four Kumars are without faith, or the Vejas or the sages in Naimisharya are without faith, but their impetus is Sukritino. Right? Krishna says, Chatupeda Parantyamam, Jana Sukritino Arjuna. That's why he's calling them Sukritino. That they are pious, but their faith is not that strong. Right? So they are considered to be below Kanishta Adhikaris. So the Sukritinos, since they lack the faith component of bhakti, they do not possess the minimum eligibility. Right? Now again, so like even we say that we are Kanishta Adhikaris, so we should not say that we are more advanced than Dhruva Maharaja and the four Kumars. That's obviously not true, or the sages of Naimisharanya. It just means that at some point of time, they demonstrated this and they made advancement. And so Dhruva, at some point of time, he was approaching Vishnu only for the purpose of getting material wealth. The four Kumars, at some point of time, were only involved in getting knowledge. But all of them made advancements to the stage of becoming much, much higher. So Dhruva Maharaj became a pure devotee. Gajendra, he went back to the spiritual world. The sages of Naimisharanya, they became Bhagavatams, like Mahabhagavatams, by listening to the Bhagavatam. So they advanced to a stage that was very, very exalted. But these examples are given to catch the starting moment of them. So Rupa Goswami, so he talks about first the three stages of Kanishta, Madhyam, and Uttama, and then he talks about the Sukritino. The Sukritino are those that are approaching Krishna with some external motivations. Right? So they are also approaching Krishna, but because they lack faith, they are at a lower stage. When these they get the mercy of a devotee, or they unknowingly perform devotional service, or they get influenced by the prior activities, they then progress to the more advanced stages of bhakti, and then they become Kanishtadhikari, Madhyamadhikaris, Uttamadhikaris. So this is a graphic that kind of explains the advancement of the Sukritinos, that the Sukritinos, by the influence of the mercy of a devotee, by the study of the scriptures, they then start performing the sadhana vedi bhakti, which is nourished by these two components, by faith and knowledge, and then they make progress. They go from Kanishta to Madhyam to Uttamadhikari, and as the faith and knowledge increases, they develop renunciation. So because of this vairagya, this renunciation that comes from faith that Krishna is my goal, and knowledge of what is the Vedanta, what is the conclusion of the scriptures, they reject the lower goals in the scriptures. Essentially, mukti and bhukti. Bhukti is desire for material gains, and mukti is desire for liberation. Right? So now we can see why do devotees reject mukti and bhakti, right? When we looked at the stages of bhakti, one was moksha labhuta agrat. Moksha labhuta agrat means that they are not attracted to moksha, to mukti, because of this reason, that as they perform the Vedi bhakti, as the knowledge nourished by faith becomes stronger, they naturally develop renunciation, vairagya. And they develop renunciation from material enjoyment, and they develop renunciation from liberation. This is why it is natural for the devotees to reject mukti and bhukti. It is a natural byproduct of the process of sadhana vedi bhakti. And ultimately, as they make progress, they reach the stage of pure devotional service. So what is the role of Gyan in making progress? So to begin with, it is understanding the position of the soul, Atma Gyan. Right? So right at the beginning of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna introduces us to the soul. Right? So that is the basic understanding. I'm not the body, but I am the soul. So when you understand you're not the body, then you give up the pursuits that are related to that body. Material comfort, material enjoyment, etc. Right? Now, such a person, on receiving the mercy of a devotee, develops faith, Shraddha. So one might ask that a devotee is merciful. They are giving their mercy to everybody. Some of the people catch them and some of them do not. Right? Now, part of it is again ahituki. There's no reason why to explain, but this is also one of the reasons that sometimes you will see that you approach somebody and you talk about Krishna, the person is already looking for answers beyond the material. They'll say, oh, I was always wondering, and fill in the blank. I was always wondering why somebody is happy and somebody is unhappy. Somebody is rich. I was wondering why some people are born in so much opulence and misery. So they're already questioning what is beyond the body, right? So that Atma Gyan, it may not have matured, but it is manifesting. And when they develop, when they get the mercy of the devotee, then they start developing the faith. So this combination of Atma Gyan with Shraddha, it manifests as Sambandha Gyan, that who am I? I am a soul. Who is Krishna? The personality of Godhead. What is our relationship? Right? Now, based on this Sambandha Gyan, one begins to execute sadhana Vedi bhakti by the senses as per the injunctions and prohibitions of the scriptures. What does that result in? So one progresses in faith and knowledge, Gyan and Shraddha. So one goes from Kanishta to Madhyam and Madhyam to Uttamadhikari. Right? This is what we have talked about so far. This essentially is practicing devotee. Right? Abhedya Gyan is the knowledge of executing devotional service. Now, as one practices, then this academic knowledge becomes realized knowledge. So Gyan becomes Vigyan, and one of the byproducts of this Vigyan is Vairagya or renunciation. Right? And because of this renunciation, one gives up the desires for bhukti and mukti. Right? So that is what pure devotional service is. Anabhilashita shunyam jnana karmadi anavritam. Right. So free of the desire for material benefits or liberation. So this is a more step-by-step presentation of the previous slide, that how does a practicing devotee develop detachment from mukti and bhukti. Now, the nectar devotion essentially deals with the middle, the abhidekya, right? Because it's said right at the beginning, the nectar devotion is meant for practicing devotees. So those who are at the stage of abhidekya, those who are executing sadhana vedi, bhakti. And because of that, they are making progress both in faith and knowledge as they're progressing from Kanishta to Uttamadhikari. Right? So the final result is that one actually gives up the pursuit of knowledge. So it's not that one derives knowledge, but one gives up the pursuit of knowledge for the sake of knowledge. Right? So it's not that one says that I reject the Vedas, etc. But they do not pursue knowledge just for the sake of knowledge. So we talked about qualifications for bhakti, right? Faith and knowledge. Disqualifications. So no surprise, those who desire bhukti and mukti, Rupa Goswami says that these desires are compared to be haunted by ghosts and witches. Because while these aspirations for material enjoyment or spiritual oneness with the Supreme remain, no one can relish the actual transcendental taste of devotional service. And we have personal experience. So we may not have a strong attachment to mukti, but we do have an attachment to bhakti at this stage. Right? We do have a desire to enjoy. And we have this experience that more we get inclined to bhakti, our bhakti becomes weaker. And a symptom of strong bhakti is that a desire for bhakti becomes weaker. All of us have experienced and are experiencing this pendulum. So Rupa Goswami says the desire for mukti is more severe impediment than the desire for bhakti. That's where it helps people like us, because we may have desire for sense gratification, but they're considered to be weak by nature. Desire for liberation is more subtle, more difficult to break. It's difficult to preach to an impersonalists, but more easy to preach to a person who simply is wanting to enjoy. So Prabhupada says, in the process of becoming detached from the names, forms, qualities, and activities of the material world, one may inadvertently develop aversion to all such variegatedness, including the transcendental name, form, qualities, and activities of Krishna. Right? So this is one of the traps, that while one is trying to be detached from material world, they also try to get detached. They also become detached from the spiritual world, right? And then one, in that stage, one is now going after mukti, right? So they don't want the material world, but they also don't want the variegated aspect of the spiritual world. So essentially what they want is the oneness. So they are essentially going after impersonal liberation. So conclusion, the only qualification to become devotional service is the mercy of the devotee. And because of that mercy, different things might come. One might develop faith, one might perform a Gyat Sukriti, one might serve a devotee, one might get more mercy. But the root cause is that one's bhakti begins when one gets the mercy of a devotee. Then the qualification to advance in Vaidhi sadhana bhakti depends on the maturity of one's knowledge and faith in the scripture, right? So this was the adhikar, right? We talked about weak faith and weak knowledge, strong faith and weak knowledge, and strong faith and strong knowledge, right? So Bhagavad is nourished by faith, and Pancharatrika is nourished by knowledge. The qualification for practicing pure devotional service is liberation from the bodily concept of life, characterized by the realization that one should abandon all desires, especially the desire for liberation, and endeavor only to please Krishna. Right? So this is a restatement of the qualification for bhakti. So this brings us to the end of the chapter, and I'm going to stop over here. We have about 10 minutes to see if we have any discussion. It's one of the very interesting chapters because each one of us can relate to it. We see philosophy coming into practice right in front of us. I'm sure each one of you had that experience that you were, as we were discussing different topics, you can mentally tick off that, yes, this is where I had challenges, this is where I'm strong in. Yes, Chaitanya Ras Prabhu, please go ahead.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandavat Pranam, all Krishna Guru Maharaj and Srila Prabhupada. So Prabhu, my question is the three Adhikaris, Madhyama, Kanishta, Madhyama and Uttama. We talked about the level of knowledge and level of realization, right? And there's one thing, at least to me, I'm thinking there's one thing, the level of realization. And the second thing is, how do you implement that realization, or how do you convert that realization into the right devotional service? So is there a gradation in terms of implementing that realization as well, or is it like, how does it work in that case?
So let me see if I understand your question, that one may have a realization that I need to serve devotees, taking an example.
Mm-hmm.
But is that person actually serving devotees or not? Right. So the question is there a gap in that one may have a realization, but one may not be acting on that realization?
I'm not trying to be judgmental, but my personal experience I'm trying to share here. I've seen who are very new devotees, but they have a, at least they are perceived, or the way you interact with them, you get to know that they have not fully realized, but at least they're very advanced. And devotees who have been in Krishna conscious for a long time, I've seen they have, I wouldn't judge them, but at least the way they interact is um, not as you would expect, like a senior devotee or a Uttamadhikari. So that's where my confusion is. Is that like the realization that they have is proportional to um, the way they execute the devotional service?
Yes, it is. So I guess the assumption that you're making is that everybody starts off at the same level, which is not necessarily true, right? So you and I may have started 20 years before you did, but you may have started at a much more advanced level than I did, right? So that difference will always be there. So we are all continuing our devotional service from previous lifetimes. So the point you make is valid, that we do sometimes see devotees who have been practicing for several years at a different level of realization compared to new devotees that are there. One of the reasons is this, right? That they're basically coming from a more advanced level of realization in the previous practice. The second aspect is it's a little bit more subtle. It is the fact that when a person takes to Krishna consciousness, then Krishna showers his mercy on that person. Later on, he does not do so that much.
Oh.
So when we took to Krishna consciousness, then the realization that we had in the early stages we still think back to those times that, such wonderful realizations, so much of mercy from devotees, right? That is Krishna. He's saying, welcome to my house, right? He's welcome. You have a guest, and at the door, you're effusive. Come in, good to see you. Right? And after that, the person is in your house. The person needs to make a place for himself. So this is Krishna enticing us. Right? In the Bhagavatam, we see that in the first canto, when Narad Muni so Narad Muni talks about his previous birth as a Shudra, as the son of a Shudra. When he takes to practicing devotional service, because of the Bhakti Vedantas, he sees Krishna in his heart, right? And he's very happy. I can see Krishna in my heart. Then he again tries to see Krishna in the heart, and there's no Krishna. And then he's really bewildered. Where is Krishna? Where is Krishna? What did I do? And then what happens? Krishna says that you won't see me in this lifetime. And why did you appear once? Narad doesn't say that, but the implicit question is, why did you even appear once? And Krishna says, I came to heighten your desire for me. Right? So that is Krishna's welcome to us. That when we see that in newer devotees, that Krishna is showering them. Even devotees, you will see, they shower their mercy on new devotees, right? And there's a senior devotee, somebody who has never practiced comes in. Like sometimes we see that with Guru Maharaj, that somebody who is a student comes in, and Guru Maharaj says, come and sit and talk to me. And then we are standing, Guru Maharaj, can I have 5 minutes? No, I'm busy, please go away, right? Why? Because he's giving his mercy to those that are coming. That's the second aspect of what you're
Makes sense. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Vijay, you put something in the chat. Which paper are you talking about?
You were saying that you went to a temple and you had a discussion and you wrote a paper with Guru Maharaj guidance how to.
Oh.
So I was just curious if you have it.
That is several computers ago. I think this is somewhere I'm guessing it's somewhere in 96, 97.
Oh, because you usually, like, I don't want to say it's a fight, but it's like, my God is better than your God, or my God is, higher than yours. So, and it's not just between Lord Shiva, Lord Vishnu, and Krishna, but it is between, So I was just curious, is there anything?
It's kind of interesting you present it that way. Again, this whole question of my God, your God is very much there in interfaith. And one of the persons who was talking, he says that, interfaith is not about my God can beat up your God. The interfaith is more about how my God relates to your God. And I found that as a very illuminating statement. It's not about saying that Krishna can beat up Vishnu or Vishnu can beat up Krishna. It's more about how do Krishna and Vishnu relate to one another. Or if you extend that, how does Krishna and Allah relate to one another? How does Krishna and Jesus, right? So when you talk about that concept, then everybody is on the same side of the fence. But then if you start saying that, Allah is the impersonal aspect and he's the lower level of realization, then you become adversarial.
But that's what, we always say, you can pursue your own faith or, but it's like ultimate, like we were talking about in previous class. If there's no Krishna in your pursuit, it's not bhakti, right? So how do we convey that to people? That's even to my sister, she thinks that once you do the meditation, if you go to that place where you don't think anything, then you are, you reach the ultimate, even though she does like 24 hours of religious work. Yeah.
Sure. So preaching is a whole topic in itself.
Yes.
There's no one answer that fits all. But I can tell you that preaching is less about convincing and more about motivating.
Yes.
So you can never convince anybody about, whatever, Allah, Vishnu, you can never convince,
No. Yeah.
but you can motivate. Motivation means that, your sister looks at you and says that Vijay is definitely peaceful. She's happy. It looks like she has found something that I'm looking for. That's the
True.
single biggest,
Yeah.
and somebody says that, I need to find what makes that person happy, peaceful, content, whatever it is. That's what is the beginning of preaching. The question and answers, the explanations, in itself, they will never convince. But when they're in that paradigm, the person is already inspired by you, motivated by you, that's when preaching actually takes effect. Okay. Yes, Mataji, please go ahead.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Guru Maharaj and Srila Prabhupada. Thank you for the nice class, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, I wanted to ask a general question, which is like, in some of the Vaishnav bhajans and if even some bhajans of, of other faiths, I have come across that, the names, the various names like Rama, Krishna, they are used interchangeably. And sometimes, it's like, there is a like a in Sikhism, there is a bhajan, Dhan Dhan Ram Been Baje. But Lord Ram never played a bean, like a flute, but Lord Krishna did. And later on, it will say, Dhan Dhan Mata Devki. So even though it is it is, talking about Lord Krishna, but it has name of Lord Ramachandra. And similarly, like some bhajans of Mirabai will say, Payo ji maine Ram Ratan Dhan Payo. But we all know that she's a big devotee of Lord Krishna. So, Prabhuji, my question is that a lot of times I have seen that the names of the God or the names of the Lord are used interchangeably. And like the debate, like not a debate, but the question that one of the priests presented to you, like Lord Vishnu is, that Krishna is expansion of Lord Vishnu. So is it okay to change, to use these names interchangeably? Because eventually, they're all expansions of Krishna. But at the same time, means I've seen this happen. So what is the right understanding, Prabhuji? Is it okay? Because, everything is, technically everything belongs to Krishna. Everything is expansion of Krishna. So I wanted to ask that question, Prabhuji.
Sure. Thank you, Mataji. Very good question. So the second verse of Shastrakam, right? It's a Nam Namakari Bhuda Nija Sarva Shakti Tatrapita Niyamate Smarena Nakala. So right now there's a Nam Namakari Bhuda. Bhuda means Krishna, you have millions of names. Right? And in each one of those names, Nija Sarva Shakti, that you have invested your own energy. So yes, Krishna has millions of names, and they come in three categories. Later on, it's said as Pramukh Gona and I think Priya. So Gona is one that glorify the qualities of Krishna, like Bhagavan, Ishvara, Jagannath, and Pramukh is one that talks about his qualities, right? Um, Specifically in relationships, names like Yashodanandan, like Parthasarthi, etc. And third category, I forget the name, Priya, whatever, which is the most, uh, the names that Krishna loves the most. And in that category, we have Krishna as the name. So while there are millions of names, they need to be names that fall in one of these three categories, right? So we can say that Ram is another name for Krishna. It is. If you look at Mahanidhi Swami's explanation of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, he says that Hare Krishna, Hare Ram are both Krishna, both referring to Krishna, right? Because Ram is one of the names of Krishna. But because it is bona fide, it is explained in the scriptures, right? But we can't invent from our own side these attributions, right? We can't say that Ganesh is another name for Krishna, so Hare Krishna, Hare Ganesh. So unless it is substantiated by the scriptures, it does not mean anything. It's speculation, right? So when somebody is, somebody is I don't remember the example, but somebody is imputing some other name to Krishna, which Krishna himself has not accepted, and then it's basically mental speculation from our part.
Sure. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. May I ask one more small question, Prabhuji?
Sure.
Prabhuji, this is a question that I came across when someone asked me, and I did not, they didn't ask me, but there was a discussion going on and it came up, and they were all elders to me, so I did not answer anything, but I wanted to still know the answer for it, so I thought I'll ask you, Prabhuji. Thank you. The question was, Prabhuji, that someone said that, Krishna is our supreme, if Krishna is our supreme father, then they were saying how Krishna could give us punishment for the karmas from previous lives and the various lives before. Like I am a mother, and I would never punish my child for something they have done in their childhood or 10 years back. If there is something we should, so she was saying that she doesn't believe in concept of karma, that it's not justified, because if God is our father, why would he give us punishment for something that happened long time ago? Because that's not fair. So Prabhuji, it's not relevant to the topic, but I wanted to ask.
Thank you, Mataji. Yeah, it is a often asked question. The short answer to that is that Krishna does not punish, he corrects. That's the short answer, right? One should not look upon it as a punishment. So we look upon our present to shape our future. Krishna looks upon the future to shape our present. He wants us to be somewhere. Where? He wants us back with him. That's where he wants us to be. So based on the future, he looks at our present. So we can understand that whatever Krishna is doing in our present is to take us to that future. So if you have that faith, then we know that Krishna is not punishing us, he's correcting. So it's not correct. So when you say that the mother does not punish the child, true. But the mother does chastise the child. Right? If the child is going and putting their finger in the fire, the mother will chastise the child. And this is for the benefit of the child. If the child is stealing, the mother will chastise the child, right? So it's not that the mother will say, I love the child, let it go and steal and steal more. That's not how the mother will behave, right? So love is not indulgence, but love is to make sure that the person is properly situated in the long run. Okay. Thank you for the question.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, everyone. I also wanted to thank you for turning your cameras. I felt a lot more inspired today, seeing all the wonderful effulgent devotees in the Vaishnav Sangha. So my heartfelt gratitude to all of you, and look forward to seeing you next week. वाञ्छकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितनाम पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। अनंत कोटि वैष्णववृंद की जय, श्रीला प्रभुपाद की जय, जय गौर प्रेमानंद।
Hare Hare Bol. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you.